can see here what these items are. They're all necessary. And we're going to initially take a little bit of air out of the tyres. We're not flattening the tyres, because the tyres actually protect the rim, and if somebody biffed the bike, you could be saving the rim by not having the tyres completely deflated. Just take a bit out, down to maybe 35-40 pounds. And it's good to have a bag like this, particularly one that will hang later on to the top of the seat tube. If you've got your steering stabiliser on, you've got to start by removing with the 8mm ring spanner this lock nut, because we put a lock nut on, otherwise occasionally the knurled adjusting nut will come off. So you remove the lock nut, get the whole thing out, put the knurled nut back on, and put the lock nut back on. It's a nylock nut, so you don't have to screw it on. You just have to screw it on far enough for that nylon to engage, and then you put that in your bag, which is already there, and move on to the next thing. So we're taking off the water bottle cage, and the reason you're taking it off is that it can damage the electric terminal on the front hub when the front wheel ends up being put on the side of the bike. So you've got your, some people have a 3mm here, some people have a 4mm. The way the bikes are shipped, we've got a 3mm here. Once the water bottle cage is undone, you get your screws and you put them back in those holes. Put the cage up there. You put these back in the same holes, and try and do that whenever you remove something. Don't put the bolt in a bag. Some of these things you just don't need to get them tight, but you're sort of reluctant to leave them really loose because they might vibrate out, I'm going to move on to the pedals, and you need your 15mm there. That's just a normal thread on this side of the bike. And that pedal is just going to go in that bag, same bag. Now you're going to remove the left-hand pedal, and the way to do that is just to put your foot on it like this. Bang, because normally your pedals are actually pretty tight, and they don't have to be mega tight, but so the pedals are done. Put the water bottle in the cage, takes up less room. Take the mirror off just by clicking it off like that, and we usually put the mirror in the front of the handlebar bag, in with your passport. Pretty valuable. Now, the seat and seat pillar come off as one thing, and when after it's removed, tighten that up just so it doesn't vibrate out, because that's a clamp on the top. Now we take one of these, the frontmost bracket that holds that housing on there. Put it back there because that's where you want it to be later. And now we're taking off the front mudguard with a 4mm. You've got two washers on that front mudguard, a bigger one and then a smaller one. You want to make sure you keep both of them. Once again, just snip that up a little bit, All the time you're doing this, you have the bike on the kickstand. You know, you're not leaning it against something. You got it out in the open. It's not falling over, and you can work on it. You just got to bend over. Just snip it up. And here again, you've got a nylock nut, so you've got to undo it with the 10 mil. The bolt that holds the front light on, note that the bolt that holds the front light on goes back and holds the rear of the, at the rear of the crown holds the mudguard bracket. So when you're pulling it off, you want to make sure you don't drop that washer. Immediately put it back on there. Snip that up enough so to the point that the nylock nut is engaged. It's enough, and you don't want this lying around and getting a damaged connection. So immediately you've done that, you want to be able to, within reach, have the zip tie. Put it somewhere where it's not going to get a hit on the side. Always disconnect this before you remove the front wheel. Keep it up there at that angle. Now you're getting this front wheel out by just undoing this axle, and then you lift the bike up, put the wheel aside, hold the bike up, slide that in, snip it up, and then within reach you've got the spacer for the front brake. Stick that in there. Try and just make sure it doesn't go in such a way that it falls out. There it is. And you can still put the bike down right on the front axle, and it's not sitting on the kickstand. Now it's vertical. You put your rotor protector on there, and you get a zip tie, and you find the valve. You put the valve up the top, put the front mudguard on like that. You put the two stays in between the spokes. As I said, the bike's now sitting on the front dropouts, and this can be removed. These are usually kept pretty tight, so I've got a 5 mil with a long and extended arm there. These screws are going to go back where they came from. So this kickstand's too big to put in the bag. So I'll show you in a moment where we put that. But right now we're going to put some of this thin rope, not nylon rope, which is too slippery. We're just tightening that up so that the whole thing can't turn backwards. Just a precaution. Now, front wheel's going on with the, you see where that front crank is, the left-hand crank is, it's got to be parallel to the down tube, and the wheel, the rim, goes behind it. If you try and do it any other way, you're forced to have a wider carton, which you don't want to be forced into. Now you're getting, depending on the tyre size, because you know a lot of people have got a bigger tyre, but you're using 350 mil zip ties here. Typically there's no need to have a lot of protection in there. This is a good spot here where you can tie it onto the rear left hand, just positioning that wheel And this varies with frame size too. But this happens the same regardless of the frame size. It's just that the distance away for the front fork will vary, and how high the top tube is up against the wheel will vary. This frame here I think is a large. We're getting another one in there, and that's now held in 4 places so that none of them need to be very tight. You don't need to wrench it. We're not taking the handlebar off the stem, we're taking the stem off the steerer tube. It's much easier and safer to have to reconstitute this than it is to put that handlebar on and get it at the right amount of tightness. You need a torque wrench for that. This is a drop tube bike, so it's got this accessory bar that holds the shift lever and the bell. We'll show you in a moment what happens on the trekking bars and the sit-up bars. But here we're leaving this accessory bar on because that's not the furthest forward point really, and it's not getting hit by anything. You don't want to drop anything down there where the gear cable's coming out. That's important. Keep that area if you're trying to put anything else in there, like a handlebar bag or a pannier. Don't put it up around that gear lever. There are various, depends again on the frame size here, but always we're putting the drop handlebar on in a very similar way. You want to keep you've got your front brake spacer in, but you don't want either of the brake levers to be somewhere where they're under pressure. Now we're doing the same exercise, but with sit-up handlebars, which is the trekking bar. Now we're using a 5mm. We're rotating the brakes, or getting them ready to rotate. And we're also going to rotate the shift lever. That's a T20. By having them slightly loose, if pressure's applied to them sort of somehow in transportation, then they hopefully will move rather than break. But that shouldn't happen. So many times I've done this, it hasn't happened to me. Now, once again, taking it off at the steerer, having 4 centimetre size headset spacers ready. And after the stem comes off, we tighten those 2 screws up just a little bit so they don't vibrate out. Now, you don't want any people wandering around bumping your bike when you're doing this, and we do it all the time in airports. So you just pick a spot, snip that up a little bit, and now take that front brake cable over the top of the headset. And now we're just playing around with this to find a good spot, right? You don't want to damage the frame. You don't want the brake levers to be sticking in or sticking out. This is a drop top tube, small size bike, so it's going to pack differently, but you're always looking for your particular size. You're just looking for a nice spot where the cables aren't under tension. Nothing's, you're trying to get everything flat. Pretty typically, the transportation system keeps these boxes upright. Very few exceptions, and when there are, there might be just like 2 or 3 things bicycles flat on it, the sides of each other's sides, that wouldn't matter. You just don't want people walking on them and putting heavy things on them. And I find that doesn't happen, particularly if you've packed it well. Now on a small like this, you can get the handlebar attached all the way to the front fork. You can the more of these tying points you've got, the less likely this is to rotate. With these handlebars, you don't want them to yeah, it looks okay, but actually it's free to go left or right. For this, you want to keep it with the bike. It's actually a fairly long item. You can't carry it on. You don't want it down the bottom of your carton, so you just put it in there, and regardless of frame size, that works well. And if you're carrying a U-lock, which seems to be the best sort of travel lock, you just pop it on there under one of those luggage straps. One tie's enough. You don't want it rolling around in the bottom of your carton, potentially damaging something. Now those tools just go back in the bag with the scissors that you're going to need to cut the zip ties. You're keeping the tape out, but otherwise everything's going in. You certainly got to get that knife in there. Zip ties in the bag. It's good to have a few spares. And where you're getting your bike carton is another subject. We'll talk about that separately. That seems to be a very good place for the seat because it's got double thickness 5-ply cardboard down there, and we've never had any issue with it. So as you're putting this in, the forks are still facing forward, so it's going to sit with the drop out right in the front corner of the carton. You've got to be very careful around the front of where that front shift lever is, where they come out of the roll-off shift lever. You don't want any other things stuck in there. And sealing the carton is something that everybody knows about anyway. Try and keep it firm so nothing carton structure doesn't get sloppy. A lot of the time your bike's only going to be handled in this carton a couple of times, when it gets changed in an airport like in Dubai, Hong Kong, Singapore, Los Angeles. You've got to watch the Americans, unfortunately. Good idea to have that there so that when somebody suddenly jerks it up and tears the carton there, and it potentially, I've had that happen, you can stop a lot of it. Now that the carton's packed, the only packing item we've got left outside is the leftover tape. And you can typically just put it in your handlebar bag. You don't want to throw your tape away because it's good tape. But I have had the roll of tape removed from my packing in somewhere, I forget where. Anyway, that's it. So enjoy.